Have you ever heard me say the words, it doesn't matter who you are, where you are, what happened to you, what you've done, what happened on Friday night, you're still wanted and welcome here. Have you ever heard me say this before? Now, if you're an upperclassman, you've heard me say this so frequently that it's hopefully burned into your memory. If you're a first-year student, maybe you've only heard me say this, 3, 4, 8 times already. I'm going to keep saying it, and there's a reason for this. One of the reasons is this opening line of the gospel, Lord, increase our faith. This is the apostles. The apostles, Jesus' closest friends, who at the time that this passage is recorded, this is at the end of Jesus' 3 years of public ministry. So the apostles have been with Jesus for 3 years. And they're still praying, Lord, increase our faith. But you know what? I wish this gospel passage started 5 sentences earlier in the Gospel of Luke, chapter 17. Because chapter 17 begins with Jesus saying these words that I really think we need to hear, because then it suddenly makes the rest of this a whole lot more intelligent. Jesus says to the apostles and all the disciples, he says, that which causes sin will inevitably come. It's going to happen. Jesus didn't have some delusion that somehow there was this moment that grace was going to somehow fix everything and you and I, or they and the apostles, would suddenly become perfect. It didn't happen for them, and I don't know about you. You can look around, I look in the mirror. It hasn't happened for us yet, right? Is that fair? Okay, so we can just take a deep breath. That which causes sin is going to inevitably come. Please increase our faith. This is hard to grasp because Jesus then warns, he says, but woe to you through whom sin comes. In other words, we should make sure that we're not leading others into sin. And then Jesus says, this is the part that I wish they had really included before this passage. Then Jesus says, but here's the thing. If your brother or sister or friend were to offend you up to 7 times a day and keep asking for your forgiveness, forgive them. Lord, increase our faith. Oh my gosh, this is hard. You're telling us we're not going to be perfect? That would be a lot easier, right? Perfection just seems simpler. But he's not going to give us what we need to be perfect. In fact, he calls us to the more challenging way of life, which is to respond to our own struggle with sin with this abundance of mercy. Be merciful, and you will be shown mercy. That's one of the Beatitudes. Blessed are the merciful. Lord, increase our faith. Now all of a sudden, the apostles' urgent plea, please, we need more faith. This is really hard. Yes, we've been with you for 3 years. You're one of our closest friends. We still don't get it. Please, we need more faith. If they needed more faith, and you're sitting here thinking, boy, I wish I had more faith too, we're in good company. Jesus is not asking us to suddenly be morally perfect. And the parable he tells is really a parable about patient maturity than it is about moral perfection. Be like a servant. Be like a servant who diligently, day in and day out, is willing to labor, even in moments where you feel as if you're not getting the gratitude or the recognition that you would like. Or maybe you feel a little bit abandoned by God and want more faith, want more grace. Be diligent in your life. You don't have to be perfect. No servant is going going to plow the field perfectly or set the table perfectly. This type of day in and day out work is not a matter of perfection. It's a matter of faithfulness. Of daily being willing to do what's difficult. Daily being willing to be kind to others, merciful to others, and patient with yourself, because that is how Jesus relates to us. He's incredibly patient and understanding. That's the whole point. I know, he says, that which causes sin is going to inevitably come. But that doesn't necessarily bother him. In spite of the fact that so often we get these messages from other people who give the impression that God is really kind of delicate, and God is very easily frustrated, and God is very impatient. Right? He demands perfection from us yesterday, and if we haven't got that figured out, then maybe we're not wanted or we're not welcome. Or if we're wrestling with some sort of a sin in our life, the messages that I'm willing to bet you've heard somewhere are, you're not really wanted or welcome. Right? If what Father Peter thinks happened on Friday night really did happen on Friday night, you've probably heard the messages, oh, well, you're not worthy to go to church anymore. They actually don't want you. Or maybe you've heard from other people in my position say, you got to get that figured out before you can come in, because until your life is perfect, you're not really ready for all this. All of that's wrong. Because that which causes sin will inevitably come. So at some point, Jesus has this very surprising, gentle response to our imperfection. But what he calls us to is this incredible response of mercy to others and to ourselves. But the parable here is about that day in and day out faithfulness. So if you're praying for more faith and you're here, good. That's exactly what Jesus is calling you to. If you're sitting there thinking about those sins that you've wrestled with, the things that you would have a hard time even coming to confession and saying out loud, but you're still praying for more faith and you're here, good. Good, that's the point. You're doing what this parable says. We find ourselves as just simple servants. We're simply doing the best we can. If you were at the party this weekend and did things you regret, but you're here, good. We're just simple servants doing the best we can. If you struggle with sins that are embarrassing and shameful and you don't want to talk about them out loud and you're still here, good. We're just simple servants doing the best we can. If you've given over some of your time and energy to drama and saying things that aren't true, and you've hurt people that you really didn't want to hurt, and people that you care about, but you're still here, good. We're just simple servants doing the best we can. And I could go on all morning about the different types of sins that we all wrestle with. If you're sitting there thinking, like we do this at the beginning of every Mass, right? We reflect on the sins we've committed and the grace that we need, and you brought something with you this morning, good. We're just simple servants doing the best we can. That is the spiritual maturity that we're called to. And it can be uncomfortable because it's not perfection. Jesus knows where we're at and what we're wrestling with. We're not called to moral perfection. We're called to faithfulness. To be those simple servants doing the best